Janet Cumbrae Stewart's story is fascinating to me. She was known in her lifetime for these exquisite pastel portraits of women. Generally, they were nude. The fact that she was a queer artist does change things because the works become coded. She went to London in 1922 with her sister and she remained in Europe for the next sort of almost 20 years. And, you know, in her first exhibition in London, Queen Mary sort of purchased one of her works.
Mary was a noted connoisseur, noted art collector, so this was not just a social cachet, but it was also a mark of her distinction as an artist. This is the top. You can't get much better than that. Like Nellie Melba, she had brought Australia's name onto the international cultural stage. Janet Cumbrae Stewart was seen as one of Australia's greatest daughters. Paris in the 1920s was legendary. It was a place of artistic experimentation, of sexual experimentation, and a relaxation of social mores after the stress of the war years. Janet was part of this world. When you look at her paintings, look at her interest in theatricality, in fantasy, in costume, I think there is a synergy between her and such creatives, say in the 90s, such as Madonna, Lady Gaga. It's queer and playful, it's bright and colourful. It is about this sort of flexibility of identity. In France, Janet met an Englishwoman who was rather remarkable in her own right, who became a long-standing life companion. They shared a house together, and she herself was an extraordinary character in her own right. Bill Farrington Bellairs was described as her manager in the Australian press, and I think managed to cut through a lot of prejudice that could have been facing her. Bill was such a strong character that I think she sort of just stared down Australians.
What really kind of stands out to me about the nature of her nudes is this sort of exquisite kind of like gentle eroticism. There seems to be this kind of sense of play of the models dressing and undressing. In many of her pastel drawings, uses kind of the pastel. It's like this kind of tracing over the body. It's almost like a touch. When Janet Cumbrae Stewart had returned to Australia after many years in Europe, and the critic was kind of commenting on the nature of her nudes and how kind of refined they were in comparison to someone like Norman Lindsay. Norman Lindsay, he had a type, and it was sort of generally voluptuous and kind of highly kind of sexually charged. It was more an object of fantasy. Janet Cumbrae Stewart's work wasn't quite like that. It's this kind of beautiful relationship between the artist and the subject. It's not exploitative at all. It seems to me to be more kind of exploratory.
Public culture licenses the roaming eye of a Norman Lindsay or a Picasso. We expect male artists to be rather dirty buggers. And I think Janet is saying, well, I like girls. I like looking at them. I like eye candy. And this is what I'm giving you. She takes the boys' game and makes it her own. In her later years, she sadly faded away into obscurity, and this was really common for women artists of her generation in Australia. Many women who had major careers in the 20s and 30s saw their careers disintegrate in their lifetimes by indifference. Janet Cumbrae Stewart is extremely important. She actually makes us think about what women are, what women want. Are all women the same? I think it's also a celebration of all women. It's very reassuring in a way. It's very empowering.